Okay, so without further ado, I'd like to introduce John Brezinsky. John is our Cambridge Senior Product Manager with interest in adult courses and English for academic purposes. And he will be addressing the technology in ELT. Thank you, John.
Good morning, everyone. Mic check. How is it? Is it okay in the back? Can you hear me? Yeah, mate. Check the microphone check. All right, so the rule is it has to be this close to my mouth to make it work. Oh, louder. You need me to speak loudly. All right, what's... Tech support. All right, testing, 1, 2, that's okay? All right, a little bit loud. I can speak loudly. This is not a problem. And in fact, usually I don't need a microphone, but this room goes way back there. You guys who are joining us on the internet for the live streaming, you can't see just how gigantic this room is. And a big thank you to the hotel for bringing in all of the extra chairs. I saw earlier just how packed everything was, and this is exciting, guys. It's great to see this many people together. I have got a full presentation for you, and we're starting a little bit after 11, so I'm going to do my best to move us through and still end as close to 12 o'clock as possible. But I built this presentation for you. I've never given it before, so we'll see exactly how long it takes. Okay? Okay. I'd like to start with a question. By a show of hands, how many of you have ever seen a presentation about technology in teaching? A little bit less than half? I'm a little bit surprised that more of you haven't seen them, but that's okay. This will be a treat. Typically, in presentations on technology, the person standing at the front of the room is very excited. They have been using technology themselves for many years, and they have just found something so cool, or they're trying to sell you something so cool, that they will tell you so many things. Sometimes they will tell you, teachers, this will save you hours and hours of work. You will spend far less time. You'll be able to go to the beach. You will have so much time because of this technology. Or sometimes they will tell you that your students will suddenly start learning English so much more quickly that you will be amazed that you never used this technology before. And sometimes they will even tell you that this new technology changes everything that we know about how languages are learned, and nothing will ever be the same. Guys, it's just not true. Technology for language teaching is a tool just like anything else that you use. Books, activities that you make yourselves, the board at the front of your room, it's just a tool. And technology on its own will not change what we know about language learning. It will not suddenly make your students into magical learners. It will not change everything that you do in your teaching. I'd like to explain a little bit about what I mean by asking a serious question, a question that people have been exploring for decades now. How does language learning actually happen? More specifically, what's the process that causes language learning to happen inside the brain? If this were a smaller group, I would ask for some answers from the audience. In the interest of time, you'll forgive me for giving some answers that I might expect you to tell me. Some researchers in the past have argued that the most important thing for students is input. That if you give them listenings and readings just a tiny bit above their current proficiency level, this is all that they need to acquire the language unconsciously. Other people have argued that the most important thing is the student's output, that the types of tasks and activities that you create for the classroom are the most important thing. We've seen in the more recent research a kind of unifying principle that everything is important. You must give direct instruction. Students must have comprehensible input. They must have carefully created output. But you'll notice that in none of these is an argument that teaching actually causes the learning. What causes the learning is a slow process of input and output over a very long time. It's an incredibly complicated neuro-linguistic process. And guys, technology in particular does not cause language acquisition. So anytime you go to a presentation about technology in language teaching, I would like to encourage you to be careful. Think about the person who's standing up in front of you and carefully consider the claims that they're making. If they try to tell you something that sounds too good to be true, it is too good to be true. But if that's the case, what am I doing here? If technology is just another tool like anything else, it's no different from a book or a whiteboard marker, why in the world should you care? You should care because now, in 2014, we have had enough years of research, both by academics and from Cambridge University Press, to tell you that when these digital tools are used properly by teachers with experience, in fact, your students will get better results. Not magic results, not crazy results. You're not going to suddenly have enough time to take a vacation every week. But the differences are significant enough that it's important for me to share some of these things with you. So, come along with me, and we're going to look at 3 areas where technology can affect language teaching. We're going to start by looking inside your classrooms at the role of technology in instruction. We'll stay inside your classroom to look at the role of technology in the practice activities, the tasks that you create for your students. And then we'll spend the second half of this presentation on what happens outside of your classroom, the homework that you assign for your students. Here we go. In class, a good teacher, honestly, doesn't need anything. A real experienced teacher can teach a language using basically nothing. But just like the materials that publishers like Cambridge University Press can provide you, just like the photocopier that your school provides you, just like YouTube, other forms of technology can help enhance and facilitate what happens in your class. And I'd like to look at this in terms of speeding up certain parts of your lesson. I'd like to look at this in terms of addressing your students' varied needs and different learning styles. I'd also like to look at this in terms of the convenience that it provides you in preparing and delivering your lessons. So let's start with the thing that I'm going to spend most of my time talking about for classroom instruction, and that's classroom presentation software. What is classroom presentation software? Well, at its basis, all it is projecting your student's book onto a screen. That's about it, guys. You can frankly do the exact same thing by holding up the student's book in front of your class. But you can and you can also do the same thing if you choose to talk about the workbook in class. But what if you could have all of these two things and more in one place? When you hold up that book, it's pretty small, yeah? And eventually you have to set it down. But classroom presentation software, and from Cambridge, we call ours Presentation Plus. You'll forgive me if I refer to this as Presentation Plus from now on. That's a few syllables shorter, so it's easier to say. Presentation Plus will give you the full student's book. It'll give you the full workbook. It'll give you the full class audio. It'll give you the full video. Are there worksheets to go with the videos? Sure, you can have those too. And I'd like for you guys to think about the time savings that this offers. All right, so let's think about it. Let's take audio as the example. Okay, so you want to play the CD. So think for a minute, how long does it take to pick up the CD, open the CD player, put the CD in, close the CD player, find the track, push play? What is that, about a minute? Maybe 1 minute? Maybe 2 minutes. Not very much. Okay. But then what if you play the audio once, you do an exercise, you play it again, you do another exercise. Maybe you want to really drill into one little bit of the audio right there in the middle. Okay, so then you have to find the track, either hit play and wait for it, or maybe you can kind of hold down fast forward for a couple of seconds. No, not there. Oh, not there. All right, so again, that's maybe 2 minutes. If it takes you a long time to find the place, maybe 3 minutes. But so what have we up to so far? Well, how many? Okay, 5 minutes for one audio track. And how many audio tracks would you play in class? And how long is your lesson? What if you could have some of those minutes back to you have some of those minutes back, so that way at the end of class, when you're doing the communicative exercise, your students could have those extra 5 minutes for more speaking practice. And guys, this is just one little example. Presentation Plus will give you the audio right there next to the exercise. It'll give you the videos all in one platform. Students' books, which you can then zoom in. So here's another example. Why would you even care about zooming in on the page? Sometimes checking exercises in class, you might want to have your students do an exercise, and then you go to the board and you say, okay, 1, 2, 3, and you ask the students what are the answers, and you write, all right, it's A, C, C. But what if you could just take the students' book page, blow it up, and then if you are projecting onto a whiteboard, you can actually just write on the students' book. Well, there's another minute or two that you've saved, and that's another minute or two that you could give to your students for a speaking activity. But what if you could also, I don't know, give the students access to things like the answers directly in there, or, I don't know, the world's most popular online learner dictionary. Oh, what's that one called? Cambridge Dictionaries Online. And actually, here's another question. How many of you guys sometimes show videos that you've found on the internet, like YouTube or something? Okay, a lot of you guys. And wouldn't it be nice if, so let's say you want to show the video after, I don't know, exercise 4. Wouldn't it be cool if you could just have the link to the video right in there? Wouldn't it be cool if you could have your own exercises that you've delivered also in the same place? Well, Presentation Plus will also allow you to do this. And one thing that's a little bit annoying about presentation software is you do this customization, but then if you save the lesson, you have to use the same computer to open everything up again. That's annoying, right? Give us 3 weeks. And the first Presentation Plus that will allow you to save your customizations to a flash drive and take your lessons with you will become available. And over time, this is what we'll be offering you. Now, how's that for convenience? How's that for saving time? All right. But I also was talking about variety. You guys, this is not going to come as a surprise for you, but the students in your groups are different, and many of them will have different language learning styles. I'd like to talk about what you should and perhaps should not be doing with technology to address these different language learning styles. 1, just because something is cool once, don't always do that same cool thing. videos, for an example, videos that you collect from YouTube, videos that you collect from publishers, any kind of video that you want to use in class, don't use this for every single lesson, guys. Mix it up. And I'll give you another word of advice with videos. They can, you go to YouTube and there's how many videos there? I mean, is it millions, billions? A lot of material there. And it's relatively easy to find a video on the same topic as the lesson that you're teaching. And it's not incredibly difficult to find a video that has examples of the language that you're teaching. And sometimes you can find a video that is at the right language level for your students. But all three together, this is difficult. I would challenge you guys to really pay attention to all of these areas of video and to make sure that when you're delivering a video as part of your lesson, you're really keeping in mind all of these, especially the language level. Now, I used to teach, and I loved showing authentic videos to low-level students, mostly because they would be so scared, and they would say, we can't watch this, but you can create lessons where they can understand a little bit, and it's a nice confidence booster. But for most of your lessons, it'll be good to make sure that the language level is appropriate for your students. I think you'll find that they get greater benefit from that. Now, conveniently, this is something that we as publishers think about all the time, and I would encourage you, as you're looking at all of the different areas where you can get video from movies, from YouTube, from a lot of different sites, that you also consider the videos that we provide, mostly because we built them for the books, so you can be assured that they are on the same topic, practicing the same language, and at the appropriate language level. I'm going to skip this next bit and ask you another question. How many of you guys sometimes see these maybe hidden under a desk? Or maybe not so hidden sometimes? Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about stuff that publishers can't help you with. Let them use their phones for two reasons. One, they are going to use them anyway. I mean, let's be honest. But what you can do is really harness the power of phones, especially smartphones, to allow your students to do different and interesting things. Here's some examples. For one, many students are uncomfortable with using a monolingual dictionary, an English-English dictionary. It's also the case that many students now certainly don't want to buy a print dictionary. Now, apologies to the Cambridge reps, but Cambridge University Press also has, the world's most popular online learner dictionary, the Cambridge. And no, seriously, even if it wasn't ours, I would be saying this. This free online resource, Cambridge Dictionaries Online, is spectacular. It gets millions of people visiting it every single month. And you can train your students how to use an online dictionary and train them how to use a monolingual dictionary. Not all the time, but at specific points in your lesson. Take advantage of it. It's in their pocket anyway. But another one that's really fun, if they've got a phone with a camera, it doesn't even have to be a smartphone, it just needs a camera. Use this as an opportunity either in class or even out of class to give the students a truly meaningful assignment. You could apply this to virtually any lesson that you're teaching. If you're teaching a lesson on, clothing, for example, have the students between today and the next class go out and take pictures of interesting shirts that they see, interesting shorts that they see, really ridiculous clothes that they see. Have them bring it back to class. Or if you want, have them email the photos to you so that you can then bring those into the lesson. But critically, have the students talk about the photos that they've found. if you really like this idea, you could really build this into a lesson. So start with, for example, pairs of students. Here are my photos. I found this. I found this. This is a blue shirt. This is an ugly skirt. These shorts are too short. And then the other, and then have pairs of students come together in a group of 4 to talk about the coolest things that they found. And then someone from each of the groups reports on either the most beautiful dress, the ugliest tie, the man who really shouldn't be wearing a tank top. And this is real. This is what the students saw out there in their daily lives. It's a tiny thing. It's only one bullet point in my presentation. But this is a really cool thing that you guys can do. Another thing that we've started to see in more and more countries is taking advantage of using video for students' speaking activities. In some countries, it's been going on for a long time, back to the days of actual video cassettes. Think about the speaking tasks that you give your students. Some of them are conversations, some of them are individual presentations, and sometimes at the end of the lesson, you ask the students to come to the front of the room and demonstrate what they did. Yeah? Yeah. Let them record it. And I think you'll find that they take it really, really seriously. Let them record it more than once. Let them make a mistake and try it again, and then actually show the videos in class. Or, again, let them do this outside of class. Let them, I don't know, let's see, maybe you're doing a unit on shopping. Let them go to the store and record a video in the store. Or maybe you're teaching a lesson on music. Let them narrate a music video. Anything, anything, anything. More variety, more interesting uses of a device that they're going to be using anyway. Oh, look at that. This little thing got cut off at the end, at the bottom here. All right, it's okay, I know what it says. So, videos in YouTube. There's a comments box at the bottom of that. Have you ever used it? In class? Use it. Either individually, let the students post individual comments, or as a class. And don't feel like you have to post real comments. Create a fake account for your class. Have the students invent a name. Have the students invent a birthday. Is your fake person a man or a woman? And post comments on videos using this fake name. And if you want to really have fun with it, post odd or unusual or controversial comments. I won't give you too many ideas, but since it's fake, who cares? See if you can get people to respond to your comments. I think you'll find your students immediately engaged, because this is real. Now, if you work with kids, maybe be careful about posting comments, because many of the responses might not be appropriate for children to read. You teach adults, though. Let them do anything. Find a video of a cute kitten and post a comment that says, "I hate cute kittens. Kittens are the most terrible animal in the entire world. Every time I see a cat, I just want to strangle it." No, seriously, no, post something crazy. Related to the language that you're teaching, of course. Expressing opinions, adjectives, or even telling stories. This is a really underused resource, and it's free. And because it's real, and the responses that you will get will be real, I think you'll find that your students are also really engaged and interested. The last one here is the same thing, but for news articles. There are a ton of newspapers in English. Many of them you can read for free, and you can post comments. Again, if you want to do it using real names, go ahead and do it using real names. If you don't, make a fake account. Make lots of accounts. make an account for a nice older man, and make an account for a really mean teenage girl, and make an account for, I don't know, a middle-aged woman who is deeply frustrated with politics in modern Ukraine. Anything. Have your students create the characters. Practicing the language, of course, but have fun with this. You'll notice in all of this what I'm not saying. I'm not saying that using technology in language teaching should change your teaching style. Everything that I've just said fits well within established communicative language instruction. I've talked about presenting language. I've talked about different kinds of input. I've talked about controlled practice and less controlled practice and free practice. All of these things are stuff that you do and should do all the time anyway. But by adding this technology into the mix, through things like Presentation Plus, you can save yourself a lot of time. Through a lot of other resources, you can give your students better variety of practice. You can help address different learning styles. And the convenience of having it all right here in one place, it's significant. Okay. Let's leave class. Let's talk for a little bit about homework. Actually, let's talk for a lot about homework, because this is actually the area where the most interesting stuff is happening right now. I'm not going to talk about the newest technologies, stuff that's only been out there for a couple of years, because we don't have enough evidence about what's really going to work long term and what's really going to make a difference. If you're interested, though, Cambridge University Press happens to publish one of the preeminent journals on technology in language teaching. It's called Recall. So if you like reading sometimes very boring research, but cutting-edge stuff, then I would encourage you to check out Recall. You can even read it online. Fancy that. But what I am going to talk about are online workbooks, and in particular, looking at 3 areas that we do have evidence online workbooks make a difference. One is that when students are given automatically graded exercises in their online workbooks, this makes a difference. 2, when you allow your students to use discussion forums in online workbooks, this makes a difference. 3, when you are given better information about your students through grade books, this makes a difference. Let me back up a minute, though. Well, imagine that this image was what I had intended. Imagine that this image was the cover of a printed workbook. And the question would be, what is a workbook? Okay, again, if we were a smaller group, I would actually ask you. Let me tell you. All right, a workbook, what is it? It's just extra practice for the language that you teach your students in class. When they go home, they practice the same vocabulary and grammar and language functions that you taught them. They get the additional practice, and it helps them improve their learning when they are away from you. Right? Right. And an online workbook is exactly the same thing. You teach the language in class, and the students do extra exercises outside of class. The only difference is that instead of using a pen or a pencil, they can do it on a computer, and if it's one of our online workbooks, they can also do it on a tablet or even on a smartphone. It's small on a phone, but I've done them. It totally works. So if it's no different, then again, why should you care? You should care. Well, let me tell you a story. With a print workbook, well, what happens? How does it actually happen? You give your students their assignment. For homework, do this, and in your workbook, do exercises 1, 2, and 3. Not uncommon, right? So the student goes home. They do the exercises. And let's imagine that this is a good student who maybe does the homework not tonight because they're tired, but they do it tomorrow night before they get to class, yeah? They do the homework and that's it. Then they wait. Did they get the answers right? Did they get the answers wrong? Who knows? They won't find out until they come back to your classroom. If they're lucky, you'll check the homework right at the beginning of class, so they get to find out right away. If they're unlucky, you collect their workbooks, and they won't find out until you give them back. This is a huge waste of your students' time. They deserve better. If they got the answers right, they should know that. And they should know that they can be comfortable and confident coming into class. If they got the answers wrong, they should know that. Because if they got them wrong, they should go back to their books, they should go back to their notes, back to the materials that you provided them, and figure out why it's wrong. And frankly, they should be allowed to try again. But they can't because they wrote it in pen, or even if they wrote it in pencil, they can't really erase it. Your students deserve better. In an online workbook, they can get better. When they complete the exercise, they click a button, and it tells them which of the answers were right and which of the answers were wrong. And so then they can see immediately, right there, whether they need to go back to their books, back to their notes, back to the materials that you provided them, and study and think and figure out why they got these things wrong. And then once they think they understand, they can try again. Now, again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about research, but what a lot of the research indicates is that it's the ability for students to see their results immediately, the fact that they have time for self-reflection, and the fact that they can do the homework exercises more than once, that makes a statistically significant difference in their learning. This is far better than what a print book could ever offer to them, just because of the fact that it's in print. Here's a fun little fact for you. So students can do the exercises until they get all of the answers right. But what we find is that many students will actually keep doing the exercises even after they've gotten everything right, because they personally don't yet feel comfortable with the language. And this allows them to practice as many times as they want to, so that then when they come to your classroom, they will be far better prepared. And you guys can spend far less time dealing with stuff that, frankly, they can deal with themselves. Many of your lessons will focus on listening and speaking in the class. And this is appropriate. When you're face-to-face with your students, this is the one good time when they can have good, controlled speaking practice with you, good, controlled listening activities. It's unfortunately often at the expense of writing. I'll just remind you again what year it is. And this is a world in which you must write often. And this is also a world in which most of your writing is not going to be by hand, it's going to be typed. Actually, take a second. Think about how often you write anything by hand versus how often you type anything. Now, you don't need an online workbook to help your students type more. Now, we just talked about posting comments to YouTube videos, and certainly people have been asking their students to email stuff to them for a long time. But a discussion forum is a great, great opportunity for your students to develop real writing fluency. I'm not talking about the kind of write 3 sentences and I will grade your grammar. I'm talking about real communication. The same kind of stuff that you guys do for speaking when everyone is face-to-face, your students can and should be doing online for writing. Now, different teachers use discussion forums in different ways, but we find that the most successful teachers typically follow a fairly standard set of practices. what they'll often do is set their students one assignment for the week. It's some kind of writing prompt. Maybe it's a question. Maybe it's tell me your opinion about this, that, or the other. And the students are then required to do either to just respond to the teacher or also to respond to someone else's comments. I particularly like when the students are required to respond to somebody else, because this is, not the same old completing an assignment. It's actually thinking about what somebody else wrote and thinking about your own opinion about what they wrote and coming up with your opinion, and really expressing yourself. And when teachers assign grades to these, try to base it not on the most accurate use of the vocabulary, but on the student's overall fluency. Did they make themselves understood? Did they understand what someone else wrote? And use this as an ongoing, regular opportunity for really building students' fluency. I think you'll find that the first time students do this, they won't really know what they're doing. They won't really know how to respond. And some of the writing is going to be kind of mechanical and not very interesting. But when they see that you are directly involved, when they see that you're reading what they wrote and occasionally commenting yourself, then it will become more interesting to them. And over time, as they get used to this, you'll find that those mechanical, boring posts from the beginning of your semester, at the end of the semester, are now genuinely interesting discussions. So the second important and cool thing that an online workbook can provide you are discussion forums. But what about you? What do you guys get out of this? Well, let me ask you a question. How many of you grade homework in class? Your students come to class and you check the answers in class. How many? Okay, maybe a third. And so those of you who grade homework in class, that takes usually what, like 10 minutes of your time, maybe 15? Got some people saying more, some people saying less. Okay. Guys, again, those are 10 to 15 minutes that your students could be spending speaking. And if you agree with what I said before, we just established that what your students should be doing with their face-to-face time with you is not saying A, C. Teacher, could you repeat that, please? What's the answer to number 7? They should be having conversations and developing their language abilities. But what if you could see their grades before they got to class? Now, all right, I know what you're saying. Many of you will tell me, but John, I love checking homework in class, because then if some of my students didn't understand one of the exercises, I can explain it to all of them. Well, yes, and you can still do that with an online workbook. But instead of spending all the time at the beginning of class just finding out which things they understood and which things they didn't, you can just log in for a couple of minutes before class and see immediately how well did the students do? How much time did they spend? Who didn't do their homework? A different question. How many of you guys grade homework outside of class? Oh, come on, I can't see. All right, maybe a different third. Does anybody get paid for that? I didn't think so. This won't save you hours and hours of time. You still have to be an engaged teacher. But the immediate feedback that your students get is reflected in the immediate progress that you can see. Seeing especially how much time they're spending is a hugely important piece of information for you. It will allow you to really understand who's doing the work and who isn't. And so if a student comes in and says, but teacher, I did the homework, but I still don't understand. Well, okay, you can explain it again. But if you know they only spent like 5 minutes on it, maybe that's why they didn't understand. Or if a student says, teacher, I did the homework, you can say, no, No, you didn't. So it's getting close to the end of this presentation. You guys are probably tired, and I've been saying a lot about how cool things like Presentation Plus and online workbooks can be in your language lessons. I've even suggested that real research indicates that they make a significant difference in your students' learning. But I've seen you guys talking to yourselves, especially you guys in the back who think I can't see you. And I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking, oh, come on, John. My students are not ready for this. They would never accept an online workbook. My students believe that it is the teacher's responsibility to check the homework. My students believe that if I give them something that's automatically graded, they'll think it's just like a CD-ROM. They won't think it's important. They'll never do it. And you might even be thinking, John, this is a Brazilian thing. You just don't understand. You're from New York. Well, you're half right. Some of your students won't take it seriously. And the first time that you try an online workbook, some of your students just won't do it. But the fact that some of your students will not do it right away doesn't mean it's not a good idea. And you guys can stop this right away. The very first lesson, when your students come back to class and you see that some of them didn't do their homework, you have two choices. Well, you have three choices. Now, one, you can name the students who did the homework and thank them, and maybe even give them a little bit of extra credit, a few extra points on their final grade. Your second option, if you choose, is you can name the students who did not do their homework and tell them, I will let this go once. Next week, I expect you to have done this week's homework and next week's homework. If you're not into classroom confrontation, you can speak to the students individually and tell them that this is the homework for the class, and that this is the kind of work that you'll be doing. And make sure that they understand that you expect them to do the homework and that you are paying attention. Because you are right. They do care that you care. They do want to know that their teacher is checking their homework. And with the grade books, you are still checking to see what they're doing. If you know that they didn't understand something, you are still having those discussions with them, and at the same time, the students are benefiting from the immediate feedback that they get through this kind of technology. So I'd like to put this, and this will be the last piece that I say. How am I doing for time? Perfect. By sharing with you guys some research that is not published in any journal. You can take notes, that's fine. But this is a global survey that we recently completed about the status of technology in language teaching. We got 1 or 2 people responding to the survey, and specifically, of these 5,000 responses, we got 651 from all over Latin America. But by far, within Latin America, the biggest country represented, thank you very much, was over 300 instructors from Brazil. So I feel quite comfortable talking about both the global situation and how teachers and students are using technology, as well as the situation here in Brazil. Let's start globally. Some countries have been using online workbooks for many, many years. Some have only just started in the last couple of years. But when we ask teachers who use online workbooks, from anybody, frankly, not just ours, we were asking about online workbooks generally, what they thought. Their responses were very, very consistent. They typically told us that what they see in their students is increased motivation, that this kind of homework is more interesting to the students. Some of the students actually were initially a little bit reluctant because their teacher could actually see whether or not they did their work. it's difficult to cheat by just 10 minutes before class, find a friend who did the homework and copy their answers real quick. It's difficult to do that with an online workbook. But they found it more engaging. And instructors found, through checking time on task, they found that over time, their students started spending more time on homework, which I think you'll agree, anytime that the students are motivated to do even 1 minute more work is a very good thing indeed. The instructors also report that students become more independent, and this is in no small part due to the fact that the students get better information on their own learning. And this allows them to take charge of the time that they spend outside of class and to really think about their own learning processes, which, as I mentioned before, it's this self-reflection that research indicates is one of the key drivers towards better student learning. Instructors also reported that the students not only were able to practice more, but that they did practice more. Finally, the instructors were consistently telling us that they appreciated the better information that they could get about their students as a class and as unique individuals, which they could then use to both better inform the teaching that they did in the class and to better assess the students when it was time to give them grades. What about Brazil? Guys, this is honestly genuinely exciting for me because we found that the numbers of teachers using online workbooks in Brazil was remarkably lower than in other parts of the world. Turkey, for example, is a country that's been using online workbooks for some time. The United States, some countries have been for a long time. Brazil, though, we get the picture of a country right at a time when things are just starting to change. And this is being driven by a couple of things. One, none of this will be surprising to you, by the way. The number of your students who have access to the internet every year increases. In fact, for many of you in this room and many of you watching online, all of your students have access to the internet right now. Another interesting driver is the expansion of ownership of smartphones. This is, of course, fewer students have smartphones than have access to the internet. But again, for many of you, your students, all of your students have smartphones right now. But by far the most interesting thing to me is just the nature of the students themselves. Your students are changing. For your students, using technology is something that they do every single day. If you've got younger students, and when I say younger, I mean just like college age, for them, doing things online isn't something new and special, it's normal. It's the way the world has always been. And these students are more and more learning in slightly different ways. They're becoming better at consuming information delivered to them online, and they're going into a world where they will be required to do a lot of things online, and in particular doing them in English. Right now is the most exciting time to start trying out new technologies here in Brazil. Right now is the time to check it out for yourselves. Try one thing, try another, see what you like. I will mention, just in case you didn't know, that teacher access to our online workbooks is completely free, so go check it out. Maybe you like it. And when you're ready to try it out for real with your students, just contact your Cambridge representative, because we will help you through these first initial steps. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm almost done. I will end the same way that I began. If you ever go to a presentation on technology in teaching and they tell you it's easy, they are lying to you. We've had enough years now so that we know how to make it less difficult. But the first time that you use an online workbook, Some of your students will have trouble registering. Some of your students won't register. And the first time that one of your students comes to you and says, "Teacher, I tried to do my homework, but it's broken," you will feel very uncomfortable, because this especially if it's a kid, this kid knows 100 times more about technology than you do, and they're telling you that it's broken, and they're telling you you should fix it. So what are you going to do? Okay, it's not broken, just so you know. Students all over the world use online workbooks every day. It's not broken. The student did something wrong, but that's not what they're telling you. But we're here to help you through the early days. The second time you try an online workbook, it'll be a little bit easier. The third time you try an online workbook, guys, you'll be pros at that point. And don't get frustrated, because the benefits to your students and the benefits to you are so significant that now is the time to get started. Now, in the early days when you can experiment and do whatever you want with it. Ladies and gentlemen, this is why you should care about technology in ELT. Thank you very much.